Hi guys and welcome back to the channel. In this video we're going to react to the 5 greatest American accents of all time. Now this one obviously it's entirely subjective, but for me my favourite is probably just a generic Southern accent. I know there's probably no such thing as a generic Southern accent, but for people here in the UK, or maybe just anywhere apart from America, it's the one that kind of sounds like this. Like I just sound like I'm from the South, I'm a cowboy. I don't know where that accent would be from, but it's so like, it's kind of soothing. Like it's kind of, I don't know, relaxing. It's very pleasant for me to listen to. So that's probably my favorite one. Second one would probably be the Minnesota accent. It's kind of quirky, it's kind of different. Then followed by maybe the sort of New Jersey Tony Soprano type accent. Those are probably my 3 favorite ones. So it's going to be quite interesting to see which accents make it onto Lawrence's list.
I mean, for me, it's quite simple. I agreed to do the video. I did not agree to wear a t-shirt of George Washington holding a hot dog. It's tacky. Just go get my yellow mustard jumper. People love to see me in that. Hello, I'm Lawrence, and I'm on a quest to uncover all of the memos that Britain and America lost in the pond. And one of those memos pertains to accents.
Let's go.
Specifically, the different accents that I've heard since moving to the United States. So you know how British people get up in arms when Americans think that Britain only has 2 accents, Cockney and YouTube sensation Lawrence Brown?
Nah, there's so many accents here. Honestly, I think there's a different accent kind of every 30 miles or so.
Well, the longer that I live in America,
Seriously?
and by now that's been 15 years, I've come to discover, much to my own chagrin, that us Brits have been making the same faux pas about the United States.
Oh, and if you're not subscribed to this channel, do that now.
For the longest time, I was under the misapprehension that the only accents that existed in this country were Harrison Ford, Robert De Niro, and Dolly Parton. But experience has taught me otherwise. Is that really the line? I've worked with people from...
Those are pretty much the 3 accents that I spoke about in the intro. The Southern, the New Jersey, and just the normal one.
all over the Midwest, and I've been to various parts of America, and in doing so, I've heard some wild inflections, delightful pronunciations, and also eaten a lot of food, but that's beside the point. And so today, I thought it would be a good idea to make a video that will get me cancelled by half of the country, in which I list my 5 favourite regional accents in the United States. Can we say 5 of my favourite regional accents? So if your accent didn't make the list, it's either because there are just too many great accents in the US, or because it is genuinely rubbish. And so, as my cat digs his claws into my stomach, here are some of the best American accents that I've heard since moving to the United States.
Let's go. Upper Midwest.
I should have prefaced this video by saying that I am not a speech coach. I am by no means an expert on delivering these accents, so do not expect me to replicate them here for your viewing pleasure. You want me to try my best. Having lived in Chicago for the last 7 years, I've heard things, right? Mostly taxis, honking, but I've also heard hints of what is known as an upper Midwestern accent. And you might just be thinking, ooh, Lawrence, why didn't you just include the Chicago accent in that case? And the reason is that every time I hear the Chicago accent, people sound angry, especially when they're not. So I thought I'd tell you all about the upper Midwestern accent that you hear in places like Minnesota and Wisconsin. During my first job in America, there was a woman in my training class who was from Wisconsin. And after hearing her speak a few times, I realized that she didn't sound like the rest of these people from Indiana. And mostly that came from the way she pronounced her O's, right? It was something like, ooh, just not as high pitched as that. And I can't really do it because when I try
Kind of like an owl.
to do it, I end up sounding Irish, which is true of most accents that I try. It was very endearing. I think she would say the word to go. Again, sounds Irish. Essentially, they do it in one syllable, sort of a monothong.
To go.
When we
It's kind of like a Canadian accent, almost.
Northern Midwesterners try to say the sound O, it's sort of O, whereas they do it, it's like ooh, like that. But one thing that I heard the other day is that Northern Midwesterners do this thing where they sort of close up their mouth, you know, no, that's, well, what is that? I don't know what accent that is. But they close up their mouth and that sort of helps to truncate some of those vowel sounds a little bit. As to why they sound Irish, I don't know, because I'd heard that much of the way that people speak in the Northern Midwest is influenced by Scandinavians. Maybe some Irish people came in and they all had a big party, and at the end of it, that was the result. But my absolute favourite thing about Northern Midwestern English is the way they pronounce the word bag. Right? It's not bag, it's more like beg. Beg, as in to beg for food. And to me, and this might just be a weird quirk of who I am, I find that very attractive. I'm happily married, but if I was single and I went on one of those dating sites and a woman in her profile said, by the way, I'm really into English guys and I pronounce it beg, then we would definitely be going to a date. If she pronounced it beg, as some of them do, then we're getting married and I would subject myself to a lifetime of talking about bags.
Babe.
So maybe this wouldn't be such a great idea.
It's quite an interesting accent, isn't it? It does sound kind of Canadian. Is Minnesota, does it share a border with Canada? Maybe that would explain a part of the similarity there. Boston.
Back in 2004, I got the chance to visit Boston for the first and so far only time. And while I was there, I was hanging out with friends and also friends of friends, and they just all happened to be mostly Harvard students, because in those days I was extremely elitist. But during the day, while they were busy learning Latin or something like that, I'd go off into the town or city centre and I frequented an ice cream shop. And I was speaking to sort of the servers there, and I noticed their accent was so strong, right? They'd lived in the city clearly their entire life to that point, where they'd say something like, "Hey, buddy, want some nuclear power with that?" That was JFK pronouncing nuclear power 60 years.
He's actually quite good at these accents. Or is it just because, you know, he doesn't, like, I don't speak to people from the area very much. Like, people who are from these areas, is his accent quite good?
Ago, but you still heard a Bostonian accent. But at the same time, I don't want to just draw on the stereotypical words that people use when they do a Boston accent, like park or car or yard. So instead, I've got far, dark, and hard. It's kind of hard to run far in the car. That I got the wrong word, but you get the general picture. The beauty of that kind of old world Bostonian English is that it doesn't adhere to the same rhotic pattern that a lot of American English does, where you pronounce that final R. And so it almost has this feeling of being a marriage between British and American English. And I picked Bostonian for this just because I have first-hand experience of it. But just from watching television, it's evident that there's some absolutely delightful and delicious East Coast accents all over the shop. I was watching this one show recently, I think it was one of those Bake Off challenge type shows, and one of the contestants was from Rhode Island. And he pronounced the word marinara like marinara. It was the most glorious thing I've ever heard.
I love accents, man. Aren't they so cool that basically, like, a group of people live in a certain area and over time, an accent just develops? Isn't that crazy? Pittsburgh.
A few years ago, I got to visit the state of Pennsylvania for the first time, and before doing so, I don't think I was fully aware what a linguistically rich state it is. On the far west part of the state is the city of Pittsburgh, and that was the first place in Pennsylvania that I arrived at since we were coming from Chicago. We were there just for the 4th of July, so we didn't have a lot of time in the city, but while we were there, I did try to listen out for a local accent. And here's what I figured out. In Pittsburgh, the alphabet only has 25 letters, and L isn't one of them. Because it's almost like when they say words that has an L in the middle of it, it ends up somewhere back here. For instance, take the name of another well-known Pennsylvanian city, Philadelphia, which has 2 instances of L. I imagine that somebody from Pittsburgh probably pronounces it Philadelphia. That, I don't know what that was. That sounded like my dog. So sorry to...
Is this true? People from Pittsburgh don't pronounce L's, or the L is not a strong L. What does it sound like then? Kind of like a Y?
People of Pittsburgh. Let me know in the comments below if you're from Pittsburgh and how you pronounce your L's or don't pronounce your L's. I just noticed there was an absence of L's. And famously, Pittsburghian people, Pittsburghers, people from Pittsburgh pronounce the vowel sound in town like tan, like downtown, downtown. Downtown. It's almost Cockney. It's definitely different. It's very unique, I think, to Pittsburgh. I even tried to get one of the waitresses who served us at a restaurant to say it without asking, because I imagine that they get that a lot from tourists. And so I just sort of tried to tease it out of her by saying, where exactly are the 4th of July fireworks taking place tonight? And frustratingly, although rightly, her answer was by the rivers. And so I never got to hear her say, downtown. Downtown. Which one is it? I need to watch a YouTube video on this.
Yeah, when this video is done, I'm definitely going to try and find examples or guys, if any of you have these accents, can you please send me a voice note of you speaking to my Instagram? So it's Kabir_Iofi.
A few days after leaving Pittsburgh, we ended up in the previously mentioned Philadelphia. And to my ears, it was pretty wild how one state could have two completely different variations on the English language. Because the first thing that I'd say upon hearing a Philly accent, of which locals say there are many Philly accents, it sort of sounded to my British ears like a New York accent, but I think there was some subtle differences in there. You know, on this channel, I've often talked about how when I'm in a restaurant in most places in the United States and I order a water, the server's eyes usually meet mine with a look of utter confusion before they realize that what I'm ordering is what they pronounce as water. Philadelphia does it a little bit differently to that. They pronounce it something like wooder. Wooder the woodpecker. No, it's Woody. I mean, there's almost a joke in it that a Philadelphian, a British person, and other American people walk into a bar and order water. And in that same joke, you might have a person from each party who asks, in my case, from Britain, have you eaten yet? Or as some people might say in Indiana, where I used to live, have you ate? In Philadelphia, it's more like gee. It almost sounds like they're suppressing a hiccup.
Gee? It's all one word.
And also among Philadelphians, correct me if I'm wrong, the vowel sound in the word on is more like on. So describe YouTube sensation Lawrence Brown. Oh, that guy, he walks on water.
Wow.
Walks on water.
Interesting.
I don't actually. This is just the perception that people have developed, mostly because of propaganda and lies, and a healthy grain of truth.
Water.
And finally, West Virginia. And if you're new to this channel, you're probably thinking, what does a city
kind of like Tom Hanks in Shawshank Redemption
dweller know about life in the mountains? Well, I am a bona fide mountain man, I'll have you know. I mean, this is still my house in Illinois, but what I said is true. Because in addition to all of the world-renowned hiking that I am renowned for throughout the world, I'm married to an American who has familial ties to West Virginia. And that means that we've spent countless Labor Day weekends up in the mountains with said family members. And it's great because one tradition that we have is to play bluegrass music. And it was so contagious that at one point even I got up and played guitar and even sang. The footage has since been confiscated by the CIA, so you won't get to see that. But when we're not singing and when I'm not stuffing my face full of chicken dippers, we are in conversation. I say we, I can't get a word in edgeways. But for the purposes of my channel, that's good because it means that I just get to listen to them speak. And the first thing I notice, they have this very soft, gentle way of talking, which is not what I'd expect of people living in the mountains. You know, you might have to fend off bears. I suppose that's a lovely way of putting them to sleep. But when you look at a map, I imagine that West Virginia isn't too far away from the point at which Northern American English starts becoming Southern American English. And I think because of that, to my ears, that Southern West Virginia accent isn't quite as pronounced as something in, say, Alabama. But they do still say things like, fine. At least my wife's cousin Chad
fine and dandy.
Did when I asked him how his family life's going.
Bubblegum shrimp.
Well, you don't want to find yourself out there in the woods alone at night, Lawrence, because you could run into some of them black bears over yonder, right? They like to say they like
he
the phrase
does a
over
really
yonder,
good accent,
which is good because it helps to keep Shakespeare alive in the 21st century. Oh, and I'm pretty certain that I heard this for the first time in West Virginia, although subsequently heard it in other states like Indiana and Ohio, pronouncing Washington as Washington, and I've just now realized that's why you made me wear the t-shirt.
Yeah, he's not George Washington carrying a hot dog. He's George Washington carrying a hot dog. That was Forrest Gump. Sorry, I'm really bad at this. And so those right there.
I have to say, he does fantastic accents, honestly. Like that last bit with the West Virginia accent where it was like, don't go up there, there's a bear over there. Like, I thought I was listening to someone genuinely from the area. Like, very, very good job. And yeah, there are like so many accents in the States. I remember watching a American Accents Explained video about 3 years ago, and just my mind was blown. I think there was like at least 30 distinct different accents. It's just mind blowing. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.